What you're about to witness will demolish everything you believe about judging by appearances. An 18-year-old black woman gets violently tackled by police outside Riverside Academy, but when she reveals what's hidden in her jacket, it triggers the largest police department scandal in Nevada history and changes law enforcement forever. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot of Riverside Academy in Henderson, Nevada, as Officer Dylan Hartwell adjusted his radio and scanned the area with practiced eyes. 7 years on the force had taught him to spot trouble from a mile away, and right now, trouble was walking confidently across the student parking lot in designer clothes that screamed money in all the wrong ways. 18-year-old Zara Mitchell moved with the purposeful stride of someone who belonged exactly where she was. Her natural hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and she wore a tailored black blazer over dark jeans with boots that probably cost more than most students' monthly allowances. Her leather messenger bag was slung across her shoulder as she headed toward the main entrance of the prestigious private academy. It was 7:42 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in late September. The first bell would ring in exactly 18 minutes, and Zara had a student council meeting before classes started. As senior class president and valedictorian candidate, punctuality wasn't just important to her. It was essential. "Ma'am? Hey, you there?" Officer Hartwell's voice cut through the crisp morning air as he stepped out from behind his patrol car, hand instinctively moving to rest on his utility belt. His tone carried the kind of authority that had made students freeze in their tracks for years. Zara looked up from her phone, where she'd been checking her schedule for the day. Confusion flickered across her features as she noticed the officer's aggressive posture and the way his eyes were fixed on her with unmistakable suspicion. "Officer, good morning. Is everything all right?" she asked politely, her voice carrying the refined diction of someone who'd grown up in diplomatic circles. "I'll ask the questions here. What are you doing on this property?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Zara blinked, processing the absurdity of being questioned for walking to her own school. "I'm attending classes. I'm a student here at Riverside Academy." From her corner office window on the second floor, Principal Victoria Sterling watched the interaction unfold with growing concern. She recognized Zara immediately, not just as one of their top students, but as someone whose family name appeared on the Academy's major donor list. This was already looking like a disaster in the making. Officer Hartwell stepped closer, his eyes scanning Zara from head to toe with the kind of scrutiny typically reserved for suspected criminals. "Student ID. Now." Zara shifted her messenger bag to access the side pocket, moving slowly and deliberately. Years of training had taught her that sudden movements around law enforcement could escalate situations unnecessarily. "Of course," she said, producing a pristine Riverside Academy student identification card with her photo, name, and senior class designation clearly visible. Hartwell barely glanced at the ID before handing it back dismissively. "These things are easy to fake. What's your real business here?" "My real business," Zara repeated, her voice maintaining its calm tone despite the growing absurdity of the situation. "Officer, I've attended this school for 4 years. I'm the senior class president." "Sure you are," Hartwell scoffed. "And I'm the governor of Nevada." The sarcasm wasn't lost on the early arriving students who were beginning to notice the confrontation. Ashley Chen, a junior on the debate team, slowed her approach to the building and discreetly pulled out her phone. Something about this interaction felt wrong, and her instincts told her to document it. "Officer, may I ask what prompted this stop?" Zara inquired, her training kicking in. "Always gather information. Always understand the situation before responding. You want to know what prompted this? Hartwell's voice rose slightly. A young woman, walking around a private academy at 7:45 in the morning, wearing clothes that cost more than most families make in a month. In this neighborhood, that's what we call suspicious behavior. The words hit like a physical blow. Zara felt her composure waver for just a moment as the implications became clear. This wasn't about security. This wasn't about protocol. This was about assumptions based on the color of her skin. Suspicious behavior, she repeated slowly. You mean being black and well-dressed? I mean being where you don't belong and trying to run some kind of scam. The conversation was drawing more attention now. Students arriving for early morning activities began clustering in small groups, their voices lowered, but their phones increasingly visible. The parking lot buzzed with the kind of nervous energy that preceded viral social media moments. What kind of scam exactly? Zara asked, genuinely curious about the officer's thought process. Kids like you case these fancy schools, figure out which students have money, then run identity theft schemes or worse. I've seen it before. Marcus Rodriguez, the head of campus security, emerged from the building at that moment, having been alerted by Principal Sterling, a 23-year veteran of both military and private security. Rodriguez immediately recognized the signs of a situation spiraling out of control. Officer Hartwell, Rodriguez called out as he approached. What seems to be the problem here? Found this individual attempting to gain unauthorized access to the school grounds, Hartwell replied, his tone suggesting he'd just apprehended a major criminal. Rodriguez looked at Zara, then back at Hartwell, his expression carefully neutral. Officer, this is Zara Mitchell. She's been a student here for 4 years. Honor roll student government. Never been in trouble once. How do you know she's not running a long con? These schemes take time to develop. The accusation was so absurd that Rodriguez actually paused, trying to process whether Hartwell was being serious. A long con, Rodriguez repeated. You think an 18-year-old girl has been attending this academy for 4 years, maintaining perfect grades, participating in student government, all as part of some elaborate criminal scheme? Stranger things have happened. By now the crowd of students had grown to nearly 30, and several parents dropping off their children had stopped to watch the confrontation. Emma Thompson, a sophomore whose mother worked for a local news station, was live streaming the entire interaction on Instagram, her viewer count climbing rapidly. This is insane, she whispered to her phone. They're literally profiling Zara Mitchell. She's like the smartest person in school. Principal Sterling finally decided she'd seen enough. Grabbing her jacket and keys, she headed for the exit, already mentally composing the incident report she'd have to file with the district office and the academy's board of trustees. Officer Hartwell, Sterling's voice carried the authority of someone who'd been dealing with difficult situations for over 2 decades. I need to speak with you immediately. Hartwell turned, his expression showing mild annoyance at the interruption. Ma'am, this is a police matter. I'll handle it from here. This is my school, officer, and you are harassing one of my top students. Your top student was engaging in suspicious behavior and providing false identification. Sterling's voice rose an octave. False identification. Officer, I've known Zara Mitchell since she was 14 years old. Her family has donated over $200,000 to this academy over the past 4 years. She's our senior class president and valedictorian candidate. The dollar figure sent a murmur through the crowd of students. Even in a school full of wealthy families, $200,000 in donations was significant. Rich families don't make their kids immune to criminal behavior, Hartwell shot back.
If anything, it makes them better at hiding it. Zara had been listening to this exchange with growing amazement at the officer's determination to find criminality where none existed. But it was his dismissal of Principal Sterling that finally pushed her patience to its limit. "Officer Hartwell," she said, her voice carrying a new edge. "Before this goes any further, I think you should know who you're dealing with." "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A privileged kid who thinks rules don't apply to her." "Actually," Zara replied, reaching slowly into her jacket's inner pocket. "I don't think you do." The movement toward her jacket triggered an immediate response from Hartwell, whose hand snapped to his weapon. "Hands where I can see them." "Now, officer, I'm just reaching for my identification," Zara said calmly, her hands moving slowly and visibly. "I said hands visible. Step away from the bag." De-escalation. Visible. Step away from the bag. The escalation was happening so quickly that the gathered students barely had time to process. Phones that had been recording casually were now focused to laser intensity as the situation took a dangerous turn. "Officer Hartwell, stand down," Principal Sterling commanded. "She's complying with your request for identification." "Ma'am, step back. This individual is reaching for an unknown object." Marcus Rodriguez positioned himself between Hartwell and a crowd of students. He secured himself between Hartwell and the crowd of students. His security training telling him this was about to go very wrong, very quickly. "Dylan," Rodriguez said, using the officer's first name in an attempt to de-escalate. "She's reaching for ID. She's reaching for ID. She's reaching for ID. Just like you asked. I didn't ask for anything in her jacket. I asked her I didn't ask for anything in her jacket. I asked her I didn't ask for anything in her jacket. I asked her."
Zara's hand was halfway to her inner pocket when Hartwell made his decision. In his mind, a suspicious individual was reaching for what could be a weapon, surrounded by potential victims, and refusing to comply with direct orders. Down on the ground. "Now, officer, I'm complying." Hartwell moved forward aggressively, grabbing Zara's shoulder and attempting to spin her around. The movement was sudden and forceful, designed to gain immediate control of the situation. But Zara's training kicked in automatically. Years of defensive tactics classes had taught her body to respond to physical threats with precise, measured resistance. When Hartwell grabbed her shoulder, she instinctively stepped back and raised her arms to protect herself. To Hartwell, this looked like resistance. To the crowd of students, it looked like a teenage girl trying to protect herself from an aggressive adult. "Stop resisting," Hartwell shouted, grabbing Zara's wrist and attempting to force her to the ground. "I'm not resisting," Zara protested, but her words were lost in the chaos of the moment. That's when Hartwell made the decision that would end his career. Interpreting Zara's defensive posture as active resistance, he swept her legs, sending her crashing to the asphalt parking lot. The impact echoed across the lot like a gunshot. Zara hit the ground hard, her messenger bag scattering its contents across the pavement. The crowd gasped collectively, and Principal Sterling screamed, "Officer, stop. This is completely unnecessary." But Hartwell was committed now. He pinned Zara face down on the asphalt, his knee pressed into her back as he reached for his handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent," he began, but Zara cut him off. "Officer Hartwell," she said, her voice muffled but still clear, "you are making the biggest mistake of your career." As Hartwell fumbled with his handcuffs, Zara's scattered belongings caught the attention of several students. Among the typical school supplies and personal items, something unusual gleamed in the morning sunlight. "Oh my God," whispered Ashley Chen, zooming her phone camera in on the scattered items. "Is that what I think it is?" A black leather credential case had fallen open next to Zara's biology textbook. Even from a distance, the distinctive silver badge was unmistakable to anyone who'd ever watched a crime show or visited Washington, D.C. Emma Thompson's live stream exploded with comments as viewers caught sight of the badge. "Wait, is that a federal badge? OMG, she's law enforcement? This cop is so screwed. Screenshot everything." Principal Sterling saw it too, and her face went pale. The implications hit her like a freight train. This wasn't just a case of police misconduct against a student. This was a federal incident. Officer Hartwell, Sterling said urgently, I think you need to look at what fell out of her bag. I don't need to look at anything except these handcuffs, Hartwell replied, still struggling to secure Zara's hands behind her back. Marcus Rodriguez knelt down carefully, examining the credential case without touching it. What he saw made his blood run cold. Dylan, he said quietly, you need to stop, right now. Marcus, don't interfere with a police arrest. Dylan, look at the badge, look at the ID. For the first time since the physical confrontation began, Hartwell paused. Something in Rodriguez's tone penetrated through his adrenaline-fueled focus. What badge? Rodriguez pointed to the open credential case lying next to Zara's scattered books. That badge. Hartwell looked down, and for a moment, his brain refused to process what he was seeing. The silver star-shaped badge gleamed up at him, surrounded by the words United States Secret Service. Below it, an official identification card with government seals and clearance levels that made his department-issued ID look like a toy. That's not possible, he whispered. Officer Hartwell, Zara said from her position on the ground, her voice now carrying an authority that made everyone in the parking lot stop what they were doing. My name is Special Agent Zara Mitchell, United States Secret Service, Presidential Protection Detail. You are currently interfering with a federal agent in the performance of her duties. The parking lot fell completely silent, except for the sound of dozens of phones recording every word. Get off me, now. Hartwell stared at the badge, then at the ID card, then at the 18-year-old girl he had pinned to the asphalt. His mind raced, trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what he thought he knew. You're 18 years old, he stammered. You can't be Secret Service. Actually, Zara replied, her voice steady despite being pressed against the pavement. I am. And right now you have about 10 seconds to remove your knee from my back before this becomes a federal incident that destroys your career, your department's reputation, and possibly this entire school district. Emma Thompson's live stream viewer count had hit 15,000 and was climbing rapidly. Comments flooded in faster than she could read them. Federal agent. Holy shit. This cop is done for. How is she 18 and Secret Service? Someone call the news stations. This is history happening live. Principal Sterling was frantically typing on her phone, sending emergency messages to the district superintendent, the academy's board chair, and the family attorney. This was no longer a school discipline issue. This was a national news story waiting to happen. Marcus Rodriguez looked around at the crowd of students, all recording, all witnessing what would undoubtedly become the most viral video in Henderson, Nevada's history. Dylan, he said quietly, whatever you do next is going to be watched by millions of people. Choose very carefully. Officer Hartwell's hands shook as he stared at the Secret Service credentials. Everything he thought he knew about the situation had just been turned upside down. The suspicious individual he'd been so confident about arresting was apparently a federal agent with authority that far exceeded his own. But his pride fought against the evidence in front of him. This has to be fake, he said, though his voice lacked the conviction it had carried moments before. Secret Service agents don't go to high school. Officer Hartwell, Zara said patiently. Are you familiar with the Secret Service's educational security program? Are you aware that federal agents sometimes maintain cover identities that require them to blend into various social environments? The technical language and specific program references sent a chill down Hartwell's spine. These weren't things an 18-year-old would know, unless, this is impossible, he repeated. But he was already loosening his grip on Zara's wrists. What's impossible, said a new voice from the edge of the crowd, is that you're still touching a federal agent after she's identified herself. Everyone turned to see Dr. Patricia Hawkins, the Academy's head of security and a former FBI agent, pushing through the crowd of students. Her expression was grim as she surveyed the scene. Dr. Hawkins,
Principal Sterling called out with relief. "Thank God you're here, Doctor." Hawkins knelt beside the scattered credentials, examining them with the trained eye of someone who'd spent 20 years in federal law enforcement. "These are legitimate," she announced. 100% genuine federal credentials. "Officer Hartwell, you need to release Agent Mitchell immediately." "But she's just a kid. She's a federal agent," Dr. Hawkins cut him off. "And right now you're committing a felony by detaining her." The word felony hit Hartwell like a physical blow. He looked around at the sea of phones, all recording his every move, all capturing what was rapidly becoming the worst decision of his professional life. "I was just doing my job," he said weakly. "Your job," Zara said from the ground, "does not include tackling federal agents based on racial profiling." She said it. The words everyone had been thinking, but no one had dared to voice directly. Racial profiling. The accusation hung in the air like a storm cloud. I don't," Hartwell stammered. "Officer," Dr. Hawkins said firmly, "release Agent Mitchell now, or I'll be making some very uncomfortable phone calls to your chief, the FBI, and the Justice Department." Hartwell finally removed his knee from Zara's back and stepped away, his hands shaking as he put away his unused handcuffs. Zara stood slowly, brushing asphalt debris from her blazer and checking for injuries. "Agent Mitchell," Dr. Hawkins said formally, "are you injured? Do you require medical attention?" "I'm fine, Dr. Hawkins. Thank you." Zara gathered her scattered belongings, including her credentials, which she returned to her jacket pocket. The crowd watched in stunned silence as she transformed from suspicious individual to federal agent in the span of minutes. "Officer Hartwell," she said, turning to face him directly, "I want you to understand something. What just happened here wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was racial profiling, pure and simple." Hartwell opened his mouth to protest, but Zara continued.
You saw a young black woman in expensive clothes and immediately assumed criminal activity. You dismissed my student ID as fake without investigation. You ignored confirmations from school officials who know me personally. You escalated to physical force based entirely on your preconceptions about who belongs where. Each point landed like a hammer blow. The crowd listened in rapt attention as Zara laid out the systematic bias that had led to this moment. "Agent Mitchell," Principal Sterling interjected. "On behalf of Riverside Academy, I want to apologize." "Principal Sterling, you have nothing to apologize for. You and Mr. Rodriguez tried to de-escalate. You provided accurate information about my identity. Officer Hartwell chose to ignore that information." Emma Thompson's live stream had now reached 25,000 viewers, with major news outlets starting to pick up the story. The hashtag Riverside Academy was trending locally, and clips from the stream were being shared across every social media platform. "So what happens now?" asked Ashley Chen, still recording. Zara looked directly into Ashley's camera, addressing not just the students present, but the thousands watching online. "What happens now," she said, "is that this becomes a teachable moment, not just for Officer Hartwell, but for everyone watching. This is what unconscious bias looks like. This is how assumptions become actions. This is why we still have work to do." She turned back to Hartwell, who stood frozen, clearly processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. "Officer, I want you to think about something. If I had been a white male student wearing the same clothes, would you have stopped me? If I had been a blonde girl in designer jeans, would you have tackled me?" Hartwell couldn't answer because they all knew the truth. "I didn't think so." As the immediate tension began to subside, Zara pulled out her phone and made a call that would change everything. "Agent Thompson, it's Mitchell. I need to report an incident." "Yes, sir, while undercover." "Local law enforcement." "Yes, sir, it was recorded." The crowd listened with growing anticipation as Zara's side of the conversation continued. "How many viewers?" 25,000. "Yes, sir, I understand the implications." "No, sir, I maintained cover throughout." "The local officer? He's standing right here." Zara looked at Hartwell with an expression that was neither angry nor sympathetic, just professional. "Agent Thompson wants to speak with you, Officer Hartwell." Hartwell's face went ashen as he accepted the phone. Whatever conversation he was about to have with a Secret Service supervisor was not going to be pleasant. "This is Officer Dylan Hartwell, Henderson Police Department," he said into the phone, his voice barely above a whisper. The crowd couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but they could see Hartwell's expression growing more and more grave with each passing second. "Yes, sir. I understand. No, sir. Yes, sir, immediately. I understand the consequences." He handed the phone back to Zara with shaking hands. "Agent Mitchell," he said formally, "I've been ordered to remain available for federal questioning regarding this incident." "Officer Hartwell," Zara replied, "I want you to understand that this isn't about destroying your career. It's about making sure this never happens again." She looked around at the crowd of students, all still recording, all still watching. What happened here today is going to be seen by millions of people. It's going to start conversations in classrooms, police departments, and government offices across the country. The question is, what are we going to learn from it? Principal Sterling stepped forward. "Agent Mitchell, what can the Academy do to support the investigation?" "Principal Sterling, you'll be hearing from federal investigators within the hour. This parking lot is now a crime scene, and every phone that recorded this incident contains evidence in a federal case." The students looked at their phones with new understanding. They weren't just witnesses anymore. They were evidence collectors in what was about to become a national story. Emma Thompson's live stream viewer count had hit 35,000, with news vans already being dispatched to Henderson, Nevada. "Agent Mitchell," called out a voice from the crowd, "what should we do with the videos?" Zara smiled for the first time since the incident began. "Keep recording, keep sharing, keep asking questions. Democracy dies in darkness, but it thrives when people like you refuse to look away from injustice." As if on cue, sirens could be heard in the distance, not police sirens, but the distinctive wail of federal vehicles responding to an incident involving one of their own. "Officer Hartwell," Zara said as the sirens grew louder, "your department is about to receive visitors from the FBI, the Justice Department, and the Secret Service. I suggest you use the next few minutes to think very carefully about how you want to explain your actions." Hartwell looked around at the crowd, at the phones, at the evidence of his misconduct being broadcast live to tens of thousands of viewers. His career in law enforcement was likely over, but something in Zara's tone suggested there might be a path to redemption if he was brave enough to take it. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly. "I want you to tell the truth. I want you to acknowledge what really happened here, and I want you to help us make sure it never happens again." The federal vehicles were pulling into the parking lot now, their presence transforming what had been a school disciplinary issue into a national incident. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zara announced to the crowd, "you've just witnessed something that's going to change how police departments across America train their officers. You've documented bias in action and justice in response. Most importantly, you've proven that ordinary people with phones can hold powerful institutions accountable." She paused, looking directly into Emma's camera. "The real question is, what are you going to do with that power?" As federal agents in dark suits began cordoning off the area and interviewing witnesses, one thing was clear: the 18-year-old student who'd been tackled for walking to school had just triggered the largest police reform investigation in Nevada state history. Special Agent Monica Rivera stepped out of the black SUV with the authority of someone who'd spent 15 years investigating civil rights violations. Behind her, a team of federal investigators began documenting the scene with forensic precision. "Agent Mitchell," Rivera said formally, "are you injured? Do you require medical attention?" "I'm fine, Agent Rivera. Thank you for responding so quickly." Rivera's eyes swept the crowd of students, their phones still recording every moment. "I understand this incident was live-streamed." Emma Thompson nervously raised her hand. "Ma'am, I was streaming on Instagram. It has, 47,000 viewers now." "Liz Thompson, that stream just became federal evidence. We'll need your full cooperation." Officer Hartwell stood frozen as federal agents surrounded him. His radio crackled with increasingly panicked calls from his dispatcher. "Unit 47, respond immediately. We have the FBI requesting your location." "Agent Rivera," Hartwell said weakly, "I was just following protocol." "Officer Hartwell, you'll have plenty of time to explain your protocol to federal investigators." Agent Rivera pulled out her phone and dialed a number that made Principal Sterling's blood run cold. "Director Thompson, it's Rivera. We have the Henderson incident documented." "Yes, sir, 47,000 live viewers and climbing. The officer is still on scene." "Yes, sir, I'll patch you through." She handed the phone to Hartwell. "Officer, the director of the FBI wants to speak with you personally." Hartwell's hands shook as he accepted the phone. The students watched in stunned silence as he listened to whatever the FBI director was telling him. "Yes, sir, I understand." "No, sir, I never meant." "Yes, sir, immediately." When he handed the phone back, his face was ashen. "Officer Hartwell," Agent Rivera announced loud enough for the cameras to hear, "you're being placed under federal investigation for violation of civil rights under Title 18, Section 242. You'll be suspended pending the outcome." The crowd gasped. A federal civil rights investigation meant this was no longer just police misconduct. It was a potential federal crime. Dr. Patricia Hawkins approached Agent Rivera with a grim expression. "Agent Rivera, there's something you need to know. This isn't Officer Hartwell's first incident." "Explain." "I've been documenting a pattern. In the past 2 years, the Henderson Police Department has had 17 complaints of racial profiling at this academy alone, all involving students of color, all dismissed by internal affairs." Agent Rivera's expression hardened. "Dr. Hawkins, do you have documentation of these incidents?" "Everything. Video footage, witness statements, internal memos showing the cover-ups." The federal agent turned to address the crowd directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed today isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a systematic pattern of discrimination that we're now investigating at the federal level." Emma's live stream exploded with comments. 17 incidents, cover-up exposed, FBI taking over. 3 months later, the changes were undeniable. Agent Zara Mitchell stood before a packed auditorium at the Henderson Police Academy, addressing 200 officers in mandatory bias training. "Officers, 3 months ago, one of your colleagues made assumptions about me based on my appearance. Those assumptions led to assault charges, a federal investigation, and the complete overhaul of your department." Officer Hartwell sat in the front row, no longer in uniform. He'd been terminated with cause, but was participating in the training as part of his plea agreement. Dylan Hartwell made a choice that day. He chose to see a threat instead of a student. He chose assumptions over investigation. He chose bias over justice. She gestured to a screen showing statistics. Henderson PD, 89% reduction in use of force incidents, complaint resolution, 100% transparency protocols, officer training, mandatory 40-hour bias curriculum. But Dylan also made another choice. He chose accountability over denial. He chose truth over cover-up. He chose growth over defensiveness. Hartwell stood up, addressing the room with visible emotion. 3 months ago, I destroyed my career by tackling a federal agent. But I also destroyed something more important, my integrity. Agent Mitchell could have ended my life. Instead, she gave me a chance to rebuild it. His voice cracked slightly. I spent 7 years thinking I was protecting this community. But I was actually terrorizing parts of it. I was the threat I thought I was fighting. The room was dead silent as Hartwell continued. Today, I work for the ACLU, training officers across Nevada to recognize bias before it becomes brutality. Agent Mitchell didn't just change my career, she saved my soul. Agent Mitchell addressed the cameras that were documenting the training. The students who recorded that day, they're now part of our Citizen Accountability Program. Emma Thompson's stream didn't just document injustice, it created justice. Emma, now 19 and a college freshman studying criminal justice, appeared on screen via video call. Agent Mitchell taught me that ordinary people with phones can create extraordinary change. That stream has been viewed 12 million times. It's shown in police academies across America as an example of how bias becomes brutality and how accountability creates change. Agent Mitchell concluded her presentation with a direct challenge to the officers. Henderson PD was once known for having the highest racial profiling complaints in Nevada. Today, you're the model for bias-free policing nationwide, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest about your imperfections. She looked directly into the camera. To everyone watching this, change doesn't happen in boardrooms. It happens when ordinary people refuse to look away from injustice. Emma Thompson could have kept walking that day. Instead, she kept recording. The screen showed updates from across the country, 23 states implementing Henderson model bias training, $50 million in federal funding for police reform, 156 departments adopting citizen oversight programs. The question isn't whether bias exists, it's what you'll do when you see it. Will you record? Will you speak up? Will you demand better? Agent Mitchell's final words echoed across the auditorium.
Democracy dies in darkness, but it thrives when citizens shine lights on injustice. What injustice will you expose today? One phone, one stream, one moment of courage, 12 million views that changed law enforcement forever. Share this story. Tag 3 people who need to see it. Subscribe if you believe accountability isn't optional. What bias will you challenge today?